Hello, dear friends. It is now the Sukkot holiday, Chol Hamoed, which is called Zman Simchatenu here in Jerusalem. And I wish everybody a happy holiday. Now, I call this, it was something I talked about a year ago, the mystery of the stolen Lulav, solved, because I have revised it and would like to present it today. And it's a very strange Mishnah. The Mishnah in Sukkah, Mishnah, of course, is the basis of the Talmud, of the oral tradition, first book of the oral tradition. The Mishnah in Sukkah, chapter 3, tells us, Lulav hagazul v'hayavesh pasul. If a lulav is stolen, or if it's dry, can't use it, it's invalid to be used on Sukkot holiday. Now, this is a bit strange. Would somebody steal a lulav? Now, a lulav is one of the 4 species that we use daily on the Sukkot holiday. It's from a date palm. There are, of course, also the hadas, the myrtle, and the arava, the willow, and the etrog, the citron. But why would somebody steal a lulav in order to fulfill the mitzvah? It's a bit strange. And besides, there's no other place that this discussion happens. There's no discussion about if you stole matzah to eat on Pesach, if you stole a shofar to blow on Rosh Hashanah, if you stole tefillin to put on Shacharit in the morning. How come all of a sudden there's a discussion about a lulav, which is stolen? And to make the point even stronger, the second Mishnah says, not only if the lulav was stolen, if the hadas, the myrtle was stolen, and then the next Mishnah says, if the willow was stolen, arava gzula, and the fifth Mishnah says, etrog agazul, if the etrog was stolen. What's going on? Who's stealing the harpaminim? What's this all about? I want to suggest 2 things. One is similar to what I said last year, and one is a little bit different. The first thing I think is like this. Obviously, I think it's quite a sine qua non that a person does not steal a lulav to do a mitzvah. What type of mitzvah is that? Doesn't the Torah say not to steal? Doesn't it say in the 10 Commandments, lo tignov? Doesn't it say in Vayikra chapter 19, lo tignovu? You're not allowed to steal. What's going on? Who's going to? It's very strange that someone should steal something to do a mitzvah. The Talmud also says, brings the verse, Botzeh barech ni'etz Hashem. It's an abomination to steal something in order to do a mitzvah. That's not blessing. So what's going on? So what I said last year, and I still think there's value to it. Sukkot, out of all our festivals, when we look at our festivals, the 3 pilgrim festivals, Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, and of course there's Rosh Hashanah, and Yom Kippur, and the rabbinic holidays, Hanukkah and Purim. When we look at all of these festivals, the one which has the most, what we would call ritual between Adam Lamakom, between man and God, is probably the Sukkot holiday. We have the 4 species, which we make a blessing on, we hold them in the hallel, we wave them around, then we walk around the Torah with them. We build this hut, the sukkah, where we eat all our meals for 7 days, outside of Israel for 8 days. So definitely we have here something which is packed with ritual, aside from the tefillot, of course, the prayers also that we have, and the hallel, etc., and reading the Torah. So it could be a reminder, as I said before, that in the relationship between man and God, it starts off with being ethical human being. Derech eretz kadmala Torah, which is understood, which literally means the way of the world. In other words, morality, derech eretz, comes before everything else in Torah. And it says derech eretz kadma, it came before, because Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and Rivka, Rachel, Leah, all our forefathers and our patriarchs and our matriarchs, they all went on the ethical path even before the Torah was given. So derech eretz kadma Torah. Morality came before the giving of the Torah. Because Abraham taught his children, lasot mishpat u'tzedakah, to go in the way of justice and righteousness. So derech eretz kadma Torah, and therefore also in education. You have to teach children to be menschlichkeit. You have to teach them how to be good human beings and moral human beings before you can teach them the spiritual level, which is a higher level. And there are many levels in the spiritual level, but you can't build a building without a good foundation at first and a good first floor, else the whole thing comes crumbling down. You can't have a spiritual person who cheats, who lies. Lulav agazul, stolen lulav, is invalid. That's point one. Now, I want to tell you a story. Just a few weeks ago in Rosh Hashanah, I was in Montreal, and there was a beautiful dedication ceremony of the sanctuary of the synagogue where my father was rabbi for many years, the Shar Shamayim. They dedicated in his memory. And really, when it comes to a ceremony, the Shar Shamayim is really the experts in making a ceremony. It's beautiful service, hundreds of people there. 2 chasadim and a choir, really beautiful. And this woman came over to me who was one of the best friends of my late mother. And she had given me a book years ago about her late father, who had come from Europe and come to Montreal and built up a business and was quite successful. And in the book, it says that after 30 years of his business, he wanted to close shop. Flew to New York to meet the Lubavitcher Rebbe, famous Hasidic leader. And he told him, he had the shop and he's very happy, but it's time to close and go to other things. He made enough money. The Rebbe turned to him and says, "You can't close the shop." He was a little bit surprised, but okay, maybe there's something the Rebbe knows he doesn't. So didn't close the shop. He went back to Montreal, kept it going, didn't sell it. Probably continued for another 10 to 20 years. And I said to her, what was that all about? She said to me, her father once said to her father was a very religious Jew. And he made sure that nobody worked on Shabbat in his business. But he once said to her that the hardest mitzvahs, the hardest commandments to keep, are the ones that have to do with business. Because you have all these people trying to take advantage of you, trying to cheat you. And you have to remember to be honest and straight as a ruler. It's not easy. Even when you can take the opportunity, you have to be careful. Because there's Isur Ribit and Isur Ona'an. You have to be careful to be just and righteous in your business dealings. And he said that was the hardest test of all the mitzvot. Because you want to say Tehillim. You want to put on another pair of tefillin, you can do that too. That's not difficult. You want to have a nice etrog? Okay. But to do the right thing, to get through the test of being honest all the time is very, very difficult. That's a constant challenge. That's why he wanted to close up the shop early. But this challenge was something I guess he was succeeding in. So there's actually a very interesting story. Chaim Volozhin, who was probably the closest disciple of the Vilna Gaon, who passed away 201 years ago, talking about Chaim Volozhin, in today's Belarus, at that time Lithuania. So in his Sheiltot, in the book I put out a year ago, he writes that the Vilna Gaon once said that the Ikar Avodat Hashem, the main service of the human being in this world, is to be cautious about transgressions between man and man on the moral level, because those are the hard ones. So it's something to think about. One other interesting story, by the way. There's a story that Chaim Volozhin wanted to ask the Vilna Gaon once. This is in Yalkut Avanim, in Ketorosh, in the Sheiltot, many places. There's 2 variations of tefillin that some people put on. Rashi, according to Rashi, is what most people put on. Some people also do according to Rabbeinu Tam, and that's okay. But there's an interesting story where Chaim Volozhin came over to the Vilna Gaon, and said to him, look, I understand you don't put on tefillin of Rabbeinu Tam because you wear tefillin all day long and you don't want to take off your first tefillin to put on another one because you want to have them on all the time, as long as it's up to sunset. He says, but what about me? I put on tefillin only in Shachrit in the morning. Why, maybe I should put on tefillin of Rabbeinu Tam? So the Vilna Gaon said, no, it's not necessary. So Chaim Voloshin said, but isn't it good to do according to all the opinions? Vilna Gaon said, all the opinions, there are at least 24 other opinions. So you're going to put on 24 pair of tefillin? He said, 24? He says, yeah, check. Says Chaim Voloshin checked, and he discovered 24 arguments about the tefillin. So then he said to the Vilna Gaon, okay, but doesn't the Zohar, the Book of Splendor, say that the tefillin of Rabbeinu Tam is on a high level called the level of Olam Haba, of the world to come? Isn't that a reason to put it on? So the Vilna Gaon says, Eineni mehader achar olam haba. I'm not machmir, I'm not so strict about the world to come. Those who are strict about the world to come, who are so interested in the world to come, okay, they'll put on the tefillin Rabbeinu Tam. But then he turned to Rav Chaim Voloshin and he said, the truth is, that's not what the Zohar means. And he stopped there. And it says that Chaim Voloshin, after he heard that, he didn't put on tefillin of Rabbeinu Tam. A few years ago, the Machon Yerushalayim came out with a version of Keter Rosh with that story, and they brought an interesting interpretation of Rabbi Yitzchak Molson, who was somebody who was very involved in the writings of Vilna Gaon. He wrote Even Shlema. And Yitzchak Molson explained it this way. He says, when it says in the Zohar that Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin is Olam Haba, meaning not this world, only the world to come. Just like the Shla, Rabbi Shai Horvitz said about Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, that the halacha follows Beit Shammai in this world, but in the time to come, it'll be according to Beit Shammai, but in this world, it's always according to Beit Hillel. Very interesting way to look at it. Why do I mention this? Because the truth is that putting on another pair of tefillin is easy. Being an honest person is not. That's all I wanted to say. I have no problem with people who want to put on tefillin Rabbeinu Tam. Not a problem. Let me get back to this. So part one, what I'm trying to say here is that it seems that the Mishnah is reminding us that we have to be an ethical human being in order to get to these levels. But why is it related specifically to the Lulav and Etrog? Because according to the understanding, rabbinic understanding, this waving of these four species represents something in us. There's a famous midrash which many people know. It says that the four species represent four types of Jews, because of course it's talking about the Jewish people, because we have this mitzvah. But it's also four types of human beings. The etrog, which has a taste, the citron, and a smell. Taste represents scholarship, the study of Torah, and a smell which goes out far is like good deeds. That's a tzaddik, a righteous person, is both a scholar in Torah and also has good deeds. Then the date palm, which has a taste but no smell, is like a person who has Torah but doesn't have good deeds. That's problematic. And the hadas, which has a fragrant smell, is like somebody who has good deeds but no taste, no scholarship. And the arava, the willow, which has neither a fragrance nor a taste, is like the rebellious one, the rasha, evil, who doesn't have neither scholarship nor good deeds, the evil one. But all these people we put together in the eged and the holder of our lulav to show that we need to hold ourselves together as a people. We can't stand in judgment of everybody. There's already a judge in heaven, and we can't be instead of. You have to learn to love people and not be judgmental, because none of us are perfect. And hopefully when you love people and you show them another path, they'll be influenced. When you criticize them, they just turn around and say no. But there's another interesting midrash. And this midrash is in Vayikra Rabbah, and also brings home this idea of the four species representing something within man. In Vayikra Rabbah, chapter 30, Mishnah 2, Midrash 2, Rabbi Mani Patach, Mani said, the verse says by King David, Kol atzmotai tamarna Hashem kamocha, all of my bones shall call out and say, oh God, who is like unto you? Well, the Shidra of the Lulav, meaning the back of the Lulav, looks like the human backbone, represents the backbone of the human being. The Hadas, the myrtle, looks like the human eye in its shape, the shape of the eye. The Arava, the willow, represents the lips and the mouth in its shape. And the Etrog represents the heart. Now, these 4 levels, by the way, what does that mean? The backbone represents self-confidence, confident in the direction I'm walking in. The eyes are how I perceive the world. The lips are how I express myself. And of course, the heart is how I feel the world and others. But this is showing us that when we wave these things, it's an expression about ourselves. And therefore, I want to say that this Mishnah is hinting, aside from the halacha that we understand from it, it's hinting to the whole relationship between man and God and man, how we're supposed to see ourselves in this world. How do you relate Judaism to the next generation? Start from the beginning. First one was Lulav agazul. If the Lulav is stolen, which means you need an ethical basis. You need first to teach morality. You have to teach children how to be good human beings. Mentioned. Second thing is it's not allowed to be dry. What does that mean? You can't teach a dry Judaism, that it's all about do's and don'ts and that's it. Because God said so. That's not going to inspire anybody. If you don't enthuse somebody, if you don't inspire them, if they don't find meaning, they're not going to do it. It's got to mean something in their lives to give them direction. It cannot be yavesh. Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach used to always say that the biggest educational mistake of Judaism is that we teach people that the holiest day in the year is Yom Kippur. So they come to the synagogue at Yom Kippur, and they're fasting, so they feel miserable, and they're listening to this tefillot, to these prayers that they don't understand. And and then they leave. And it's not surprising they don't come back till next year. It says, if we would teach people that the holiest day of the year is Purim, they would come to synagogue, they would be happy and be dancing and drink l'chaim. You'd see them back in synagogue next Shabbat. Because when you teach somebody that something can inspire, make their lives meaningful, it cannot be yavesh. It's not allowed to be dry, or else who wants that? So the lulav has to be not stolen, but also not dry. It has to be inspirational. Meaning Judaism has to be inspirational. And that's why it says that about the lulav, and about the hadas, and about the arava, and about the etrog, the same thing. But then there's another point. Niktam rosho, if the head was cut off, meaning you snipped off the top of the lulav, you snipped off the top of the branch of the arava, or you snipped off the top of the branch of the hadas, they're also invalid. What does that mean? It's true, but you could also snip off the middle. But I'll tell you what I think. I think this is also hinting to something. In our understanding of religion, you can't be just you have to be orthodox and not just orthopractice. You can't just do the mitzvot. You have to understand what you're doing. Because human beings, for us, the way we understand things is the most important things in our lives. You cannot disconnect the head from what you're doing, neither from the heart nor from the actions. It needs to be part of our Weltanschauung, of our understanding of life. If you cannot teach young people how Judaism relates to life, what do you expect them to do? Live a little insular ghetto and pretend that there's nothing on the outside? Even in the most insular of our communities, it doesn't work. You have to learn how to make that interface between life and Jewish life so that people understand how it applies and also how it applies to our understanding of the world, which changes in every generation. That's what happens in Jewish thought, in every generation, Jewish philosophy. It's always somebody, whether it's a Rambam, Rav Yehuda Levi, or the Maharal, people trying to apply things and explain to us how it gives meaning to life. Not just by enthusiasm, but intellectually. So you can't be a Niktam Rosho. You want people to be solid Jews, they also have to understand how it builds up their understanding of life in general. So it says this about the Lulav. It says this because the Lulav represents our confidence. You can't be confident unless you have an understanding of life. You cannot, the Arava is the way we see the world. We want to see the world in this relationship between Judaism and the world. And when we express ourselves, we want to express ourselves as a relationship. The only one it doesn't say that about is the etrog, which represents the heart. Because the heart has its own way of understanding the world. That's a discussion by itself. But now I'm trying to say here, there are three things that our Mishnah is hinting to us. Three levels in educating a person towards a religious experience. One, to be an ethical human being, based on the way the Torah teaches us. Secondly, to be inspired, to give inspiration and enthuse people what they're doing. And third, to explain to them how it explains the world as we understand it, to make it into a whole world theory and to spend time in it. We have so much literature on this, so much. It has to be understood. And every generation, somebody has to re-explain, because in every generation, we need this. We need these explanations. There's more, but I think I'll hold it at this. And I think this is a solution of the mystery of the stolen lulav, in my opinion, has to do with this whole approach that the Mishnah is hinting to be ethical human beings, to be inspired and motivated through the mitzvot, through the commandments, and to have an understanding, understand the interface between the Torah and life, and how it enriches life and gives meaning to life. And if we can teach it on those three levels, it will mean something to us and enhance our lives. Chag Sameach. Shalom, shalom.